Hello everyone. By the way, I welcome you all, my lovely brothers and sisters. It's our third lecture on the second chapter of the trigonometry. Obviously, we will work from basics up to high level of the trigonometry in our lectures. By the way, in this third lecture, we will have our drawing of the graphs, maybe on the expansion and also contraction of the graph of the trigonometry, and we will work on the transformation of the graph in x and y axis. If you know how to define and how to draw such graphs, you will not find anything else interesting in this graph. If you don't know, then please pick up your notebooks and also a pen. Then just listen carefully what I give the lecture, then rewrite it on your notebooks. By the way, please be ready, we will start. By the way, our topic is expansion and contraction of the trigonometric ratios. I will give the lectures on sine and cosine. Then in the end of the lecture, we will draw the graph of the tangent, cotangent, secant and cosecant, and you will know the contraction, expansion and also transformation of all of the trigonometric ratios. But we will work as an example on the sine and cosine especially. What you know first is that you know the graph of fx sine x and fx cosine x. You have studied this one in derivatives. By the way, just for a revision, if you want to define the graph of sine and cosine, what is the graph of sine? This is our y-axis, this is our x-axis, this is 0 degree, this is pi divided by 2, it's pi, this one is 3 pi by 2, and this one is 2 pi. You know the maximum value of the sine is +1 and minimum is -1. Now the graph of sine is like this one. It means it has a maximum value on pi divided by 2. The value of sine in pi is 0 and the value of sine in 3 pi by 2 is -1. This is the graph for the sine. Am I right or not? Yes. Now this graph, it is convex in 0 up to pi, and a concave graph we have from pi up to 2 pi. This is the graph of fx equal to sine x. Maximum value is +1 and minimum value is -1. If you want to draw the graph of cosine, this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. Now maximum value is +1, minimum value is -1 or -1, it's 0. This one is pi divided by 2, it's pi, 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi. Am I right? First, how do I look? Interesting or not? Yes, you're nice. By the way, graph of cosine starts from +1 and in pi divided by 2 is 0. In pi the cosine is -1, in 3 pi by 2 is 0, and in 2 pi this one is +1. So this is our graph. This is the graph of the cosine. After 2 pi we have the remaining like this one, and before 0 it is also like this one. In here after 2 pi it rotates the same, and here also. Am I right or not? It means if you want to know this is fx cosine x, and this one is sine x. If you want to know the period for sine x and cosine x, it is 2 pi. It means 360 degree. What does it mean? It means after every 2 pi, the graph is what? Repeating the same. For example, after 2 pi here, then for the next 2 pi, it is the same which we had from 0 to 2 pi. And also, the cosine is the same. After every 2 pi, the graph repeats the same which was from 0 up to 2 pi. So we can say the period for the sine and cosine, it is 2 pi for sine x and cosine x. Also, if you want to find the amplitude, this is called amplitude, from positive 1 up to negative 1, or from negative 1 up to positive 1. Amplitude for sine x and cosine x, it is from what? From -1 up to positive 1. From -1 up to positive 1. This is our amplitude for sine x and cosine x. And one thing more that you have to know, the range for this one is also from -1 up to positive 1. This is our range or codomain. Range or codomain. There is a little difference between range and codomain. You will study, inshallah, in higher mathematics, in the function especially. Range and codomain for sine x and cosine x, it's again from -1 up to positive 1. The graph extend up to positive 1 and also negative 1. Between this one, we have the graph of the sine x and cosine x. Now, by knowing such information, we will be able, inshallah, to define the expansion and contraction of the trigonometric ratios. Now, how? Please write it. We will come. By the way, we will talk about expansion and contraction of the trigonometric ratios. First, we will talk about the expansion and contraction along x-axis. What does it mean? It means we have two kinds of expansion and contraction. First along x-axis and second along y-axis. Whenever you're talking about x-axis, the graph looks like fx sine nx or cosine nx. N is a number. If this n comes inside the angle, so it will talk about expansion and contraction. If n is greater than 1, so it will talk about expansion. But if n is between 1 and 0, so it will talk about contraction. What does it mean? Suppose if we have sine 3x, this 3 is greater than 1, so this will talk about, I'm sorry, this will talk about contraction. And if n is between 0 and 1, it will talk about expansion. Now, what do you think? 3 is greater than 1, so it will talk about what? Contraction of the graph of the sine. And it means sine 3x, the contraction of the sine 3x with respect to the sine x. And if I say sine x divided by 3, this one will talk about expansion. Now, how? We will draw this one. Write it, please. Okay. As an example, we will work first on how to define fx sine 2x. Now, how you can draw this graph. By the way, first you have to find the period. How we can find the period? Period for sine x, it is 2 pi. For cosine x, it's also 2 pi. Now, what is the period for sine 2x? You have to divide this 2 pi by this coefficient 2. 2 with 2 is cancelled, it is pi. It means 180. The period for sine 2x is 180. Then 180 divide this one by 4. Why? Because we have to define these 4 points, 1, second, third, and 4. So 180 divided by 4, it is 45, or we can say pi divided by 4. It means now you have to draw the sine x in 180, and every point should be pi divided by 4. What do I mean? I mean in here, this is your x-axis, this is your x-axis, yes, this is your y-axis, this is positive 1, this one is negative 1. Am I right? The first we had 0, it was pi by 2, it was pi, 3 pi by 2, and 2 pi. This was our previous one. But in here you have to draw this sign in pi radian, or 180. It means this is 0, this is pi divided by 2, this is pi divided by 4, or 45. This is 90, this is 135, or 3 pi by 4, and this is your pi. Now you have to draw that sign in here. Before we had the graph like this one. 0, we had pi divided by 2, pi divided by 2. Then we had pi, we had 3 pi by 2, and we had 2 pi. Now, what do you think? This is the what? Contraction of the sign or expansion? I think this is contraction. It means you press this point up to pi. This point up to pi. We mean that if you define this graph sine 2x, so you will have two graphs of sine x. You will have how many graphs? Two graphs. This is 1 pi by 4, this is another 1 pi by 4. With respect sine x, sine 2x, it repeats its graph 2 times. I think you have got. Now we will draw sine 3x. Wait a moment. Fx sine 3x. Now, how you can define? First, we have to find period. 2 pi divided by 3. This is our period. Or we can say 360 divided by 3. Divide by this n. This coefficient. 360 by 3, it is 120 degree. It means in 120 degree, we have our graph of sine x. So that graph of sine x, which you draw in 120, it's the graph of sine 3x. What do I mean? First, you have to divide this 120 by 4, that you can find these 4 points. So 120 divided by 4, it is 30 degree. It means this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. Now maximum point positive 1 and minimum one is negative, and you have to draw your graph of sine in 120, and every point should be 30 degree. This is 0, 30, 60, this is 90 and 120. 0, 30 degree, this is 60, this is what? 90, and this one is 120 degree. Now it starts from 0, another point is our maximum, the next one it cross, another point is our minimum, and the next point it cross. This is the graph of sine 3x. This is sine 2x, and this is sine 3x. If I ask, how many rotation do we have of sine 3x in 2 pi? 3. What do I mean? It means after 120 we have another 30, 150, 180, 210, and this is 240. Now your graph, 1 point, the next point is our maximum, it crosses, minimum, it crosses. After this one we have 30 more, another 30, we have 430, which we can say it's 360. Now your graph is maximum, cross, minimum, cross. This is your graph for sine 3x. And obviously we can see that this is the contraction of the what? Of the sine x. Sine 3x is the contraction of the sine x. How many sine x? 3 sine x. Sine x, the graph is up to 2 pi. We have 1 period. But sine 3x with respect to the sine x, it's the same graph. But how many times? I think 3 times. Write it please. Now we will go on cosine. Question number 3. Fx cosine 2x. What do you mean? It means we have a contraction or maybe expansion along x-axis of the cosine. This 2 is greater than 1, so it is contraction. So how we can draw this one? First you have to find period. Step number 1. You have to find what? Period. Step 2. Divide this period on 4. Then step number 3, you have to follow or copy the basic graph. What do you mean? If it is cosine 2x, so you have to follow or copy the cosine x in which period? In this period, in your new period. By the way, what is the period of cosine 2x? Period of cosine 2x is 2 pi or 360. So 2 pi divided by this coefficient 2, it is pi or 180. Now 180 divided by 4, it is 45 degree. Am I right or not? Or pi divided by 4. Now this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. 0, this is -1, this is +1. Now it is 45, 90, 135 and 180. Now what the graph cosine is, it starts from 1. The first point it crosses. It means it starts from here. The first point we have to cross. Let me draw these lines. The first point we have to cross. The next point is our minimum. This is our next point. It is minimum. Am I right or not? The next point we have to cross x-axis. We have to cross, and this is our next point. This is the graph of the cosine 2x. It means in 360 we have 45, another 45, the next one, and the last one is 360. 45, 225. This is 270, 315 and 360. Now our graph It means how many graph of the cosine x we have, and from 0 to 360 and cosine 2x we have 2 graph. It repeats 2 times. It means its period is 180. Now if you defined another example, example number 4, fx cosine 3x. How you can do this one? Period 360 divided by 3, it is 120. Now this 120 should be divided by 4, we have 30. Now this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis, it is positive 1, this one is negative 1. You have to find every 30 degree. This is 0, 30, we have 60, 90 and 120. The maximum is positive 1 and the minimum is negative 1. It starts from here. Cosine starts from this one point. The first point it should cross, the second point it should be minimum, the next point it should cross, and the next point it should be the maximum. Now for another one, 120, we have 150, 180, am I right or not? 210, 240. Now the graph is the next one, 30, 60, 90 and 360. This is our graph for cosine 3x. I think you have got. Write it please. Example number 5. Fx is equal to sine x divided by 2. Now what do you think? This one is the expansion and contraction along x-axis or not? Yes, it is. Why? Because along x-axis the graph is written like sine nx or cosine nx. If n is greater than 1, it's contraction. If n is smaller than 1, so it is expansion. Now what do you think? N is 1 by 2. N is what? 1 by 2. So it is expansion. First you have to define period. How we can define the period? Period of sine is 360. 360 divided by 1 divided by 2. First we have to find period. 360 is for sine. It is sine 1 divided by 2. So you have to divide this one 1 by 2. This 2 goes to numerator, so it would be 720. It means our period in sine x by 2 is 720 degree. Now you have to define 4 points. 720 divided by 4, I think it is 180. Now what does it mean? This is our x-axis, this is our y-axis, it is positive 1, this one is negative 1. Now you have to define every 180 degree. 180, we have 360, another 80, this is 180 more, which is 540, and this is 720. 180, we have 360, and we have 540 and 720. This is the lines that the sine is drawn between these two lines. Now sine starts from here, from 0. The first point is our maximum. This is our first point, this is our maximum. The second point it crosses, the next point is our minimum, and the next one it crosses. So This is minimum. This is the graph for sine x by 2. What do you mean? Our first graph was in here, 90, 180, 270 and 360. This was our first graph. This is sine x, but this one is sine x by 2. It means this point is extended up to 720. So if n is smaller than what? Smaller than 1. It means between 0 and 1. So it is called expansion of the graph. And our period for sine x by 2, it is 720. I think you have got. We will have another example. Example number 6. Fx sine x by 3. Now, how we can draw this graph? First you have to find period. Now for period of the sine, it's 360 degree divided by 1 by 3. So this 3 moves to what? Nominator. 3 times this one, 3 times this one, I think 1080. Am I right or not? 1080 degree. Yes. Now, or we can say this one is 2 pi. 2 pi times 3, it is 6 pi. 6 pi. Now, how we can define the points? This 6 pi should divided by 4. It is, it's what? We can cancel this one, 2. This is 3 pi by 2. 3 pi by 2. This is our every point, or 270 degree. 270 degree. Now, this is your x-axis. This is your y-axis. Maximum point, positive 1. Minimum is negative 1. And we have 270. Every point should be 270. This is 0. 1 270 here we have. Another 270 here we have, which is 540. Another 270 we have here. And the last one we have here. Wait a moment. This is another 270. And this is our last one, which is 1080. Am I right? Yes. Now, your graph should be drawn here. This is our positive one line, and this is our negative. Now, what do you think? The first one for sine, this is our maximum point. Then it crosses the second. The third one is our negative here, and the next one it crosses. So this is the graph for what? For sine x divided by 3. I think you have got. It's called the expansion. The period is from 0 up to 1080. It means 6 pi. Write it, please. Example number 7. Fx is equal cosine x by 2. I'm sure that you can draw this one. By the way, I will draw the cosine x by 2, and you have to draw cosine x by 3. This is your homework. Fx cosine, not x by 3, x by 5. Can you do? Yes, I'm sure. By the way, cosine x by 2, first you have to find period. How we can define period? Period is 360 divided by 1 by 2. So it is 720. This is our period. Now this 720 should be divided by 4 to find those values that we have to take as a maximum, minimum, or as a cross. Now 720 divided by 4, I think this is 180. What do you mean? This is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. Maximum value is positive 1, minimum value is negative 1. The numbers on x-axis is 0, 180, another 180 which is 360, another 180 which is 540, and the last one which is 720. Now cosine starts from positive 1. This is our line for positive 1, and this is our line for negative 1. Why I draw these lines? Because not to move outside of the positive 1 and negative 1. You have to draw your graph between positive and negative. It starts from this point here. First one, it have to cross. The second, it should be like minimum, which is what? Which is 360. The next line, it should cross, which is 540, and the next one, it should be like maximum. This is our graph for fx equal to cosine x by 2. I'm sure that you have got. Now you can define and draw cosine x by 5. Expansion and contraction along y-axis. By the way, whenever you're talking about expansion and contraction along y-axis, the graph looks like fx in sine x and in cosine x. Now, if this n is greater than 1, so if this one is greater than 1, it shows the what? It shows the expansion in here. But if this one is between 1 and 0, so it is our contraction of the graph. If n is greater than 1, it shows expansion, and if this one is between 0 and 1, it is contraction. One thing you might be thinking, if n is smaller than 0, it means minus. Then what this one is? It is maybe an expansion or contraction, but opposite to the side of this graph. It means if this one is our minimum, but if this in here we have a negative, so the graph makes vice versa of this one along the x-axis. We will define, inshallah. Wait a moment. By the way, our first example, if I have fx is 2 sine x. Now what does it mean? Now sine x, this is our sine x. It means our period is the same as it is. But if we have in here 2, 3 or 4 a number, so it shows the expansion and contraction along y-axis, and this is our amplitude. If this one is positive 1, if this one is positive 1, it means this one is drawn between negative 1 and positive 1. If this one is 2, it means we have to draw this one between negative 2 and positive 2. What do I mean? I mean that this is our x-axis, yes, this is our y-axis, this is our positive 1, this is our negative 1, pi by 2, this is pi, 3 pi by 2, and 2 pi. Our graph was like this one. But If we want to define 2 sine x, this graph should be drawn between positive 2 and negative 2. What does it mean? This maximum should be in here. This is our 2 sine x graph, and this one is our sine x graph. I think you have got. What does it mean? It means we have an extension along the y-axis. Extension along the y-axis. And the graph is drawn between positive 2 and negative 2. It means amplitude is 2. This is our amplitude. 2. This is 2. This is also 2. It's called our amplitude. Am I right? Or we can say that our range is between negative 2 and positive 2. Amplitude is 2 unit. By the way, you have got. Write it, please. We will have another example. Finished. If we want to draw number 2, fx 3 sine x, what does it mean? It means that you have to draw the sine x between positive 3 and negative 3. Now, this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis, this is positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Am I right? Yes. Pi by 2. This is pi. 3 pi by 2. 2 pi. Pi by 2. Pi. 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi. Our previous graph was between negative 1 and positive 1. But in here, our maximum is 3. This one cross. This is our negative. And this one, it crosses. Now, we have to draw this is our graph for 3 sine x. Am I right? If we have this one, fx minus 3 sine x. Now the same, but it should be inversed along x-axis. It means the graph is, this is pi this graph, this is our fx minus 3 sine x. I think you have got. It means the same 3 sine x, it should be inversed along x-axis. Am I right? It is also extension or expansion of the graph. What do I mean? For example, if I have another example, fx is minus sine x. Now, how you can draw this one? This is our x-axis. This is our y-axis. What's the amplitude? This coefficient. This coefficient is amplitude. It means 1. It means it has to be drawn between positive 1 and negative 1. This is pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2, and 2 pi. Why? Because we have sine x. We don't have sine 2x. Now, the graph is between positive 1 and negative 1. But vice versa of this graph. We have this 0. This is our pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2, and 2 pi. Now, if this pi by 2 is maximum, and minus 3 sine x, this is minimum. This is cross. If this one was negative, this one was minimum. So in here we have maximum. Now what the graph is, this is fx equal to minus sine x. I think you have got. Write it please. We will work on cosine. Question number 5. fx is equal to 4 cosine x. Now it is contraction and extension along y-axis. Why? Because we have n cosine. Now how we can draw this graph? The period is the same cosine. It means between 0 and 360. The points are the same, but we have the difference in amplitude. Amplitude is 4. Amplitude is 4. Now how you can draw this one? This is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. 4, this is positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, this is positive 4, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3 and negative 4. Between these two lines we have to draw the graph. Now it's 0, this is pi by 2, this is pi, this one is 3 pi by 2 and this one is 2 pi. It starts the cosine from positive 1, but 4 cosine starts from 4. The first point it should cross, the first point it should cross. The second point should be our minimum, and the second point should be our minimum but in negative 4. The next point it crosses, the next point it crosses, and the next point is our maximum. Now I have to draw this one. This is concave graph. In here this one is a convex. Also here we have a convex. This is our graph for fx equal to 4 cosine x. Am I right? Yes. Example number 6. If I have fx equal to 1 divided by 2 sine x. Now this is contraction. Why? Because this coefficient is between 0 and 1 and 1. By the way, how we can do this one? This is our x-axis, this is our y-axis, this is positive 1, this is negative 1. The graph for sine, we have pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi. Now our graph should be drawn between positive 1 divided by 2 and negative 1 divided by 2. Not positive 1 here. Positive 1 divided by 2 and negative 1 divided by 2. This is the line that we have to draw our graph. Graph is sine. It starts from 0. The next point is our maxima. This is our next point. This is our maxima. The next point it should cross. The next point should be our minimum, and the next point it should cross. This is the graph for what? For 1 divided by 2 sine x. But this was the graph. It was the graph for the sine x. And this graph that I have it on the board, it is for what? For 1 by 2 sine x. Now, can you draw fx is equal to 1 by 3 cosine x? Yes. The same graph starts from 1 by 3 and negative 1 by 3. I mean, this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. It is positive 1, this one is negative 1, but it should be 1 by 3. So you have to divide this one into 3 parts. This is positive 1 divided by 3, and this one is negative 1 divided by 3. This is 0. This one is pi by 2, pi. This one 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi. Now between these lines we have to make our graph. Now cosine starts from positive 1, here from positive 1 divided by 3. The first point it should cross, this is our minimum, it should cross, this is our maximum. This is the graph of the cosine in contraction form along y-axis. I'm sure that you have got. Write it please. If I ask you if x is equal to 2 sine 3x, can you draw this one? Yes, obviously. First you have to find the period. What period is? 360 divided by 3. 360 by 3, it is 120. It means our graph should be drawn in 120 degree. The next one, what is our amplitude? Amplitude is 2. It means between positive and negative 2, we have to draw the graph of sine in 120. What does it mean? This is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. Now we have our amplitude is positive 2 and negative 2. This is 0, positive 1, positive 2, negative 1, negative 2. Now our every point is 120 divided by 4, which is 30. 0, we have 30 degree, we have 60 degree, we have 90 degree, and we have 120. Am I right? Yes. Now the first point, it is sine. It starts from 0. The next point is our maximum. The next point it crosses, the next point is our minimum, and the next point it crosses. Here is our graph. This is graph for fx is equal to 2 sine 3x. I think you have got. We have an expansion in y-axis and extension and contraction in x-axis. We have both expansion in y-axis and contraction in x-axis. Write it please. By the way, our next topic is transformation or transition of the trigonometric ratios along x-axis and y-axis. Now, how we can do? We have two transitions. First one is x-axis and the second is y-axis. Whenever you are talking about along x-axis, now the formula is fx is equal to sine of x plus or negative alpha, and maybe cosine of x plus minus alpha. If we have an alpha which is added or subtracted from x, this is called a transition of the graph of sine along the x-axis. Now, what does it mean? It means if I have fx is equal to sine x plus pi by 2. Now, how we can draw this graph? First, you have to find the initial point. The first step, we have to find step number 1, initial point. For initial point, this x plus pi by 2 equal to 0. Now x is minus pi divided by 2. It means the graph of sine starts from minus pi by 2. Step number 2, copy as it is. Finished. What do I mean? It means this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis, this is positive 1, this one is negative 1, it is 0, pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi. Now our sine x starts from 0, but this sine should start from minus pi divided by 2. This is minus pi divided by 2. So this is our initial point. It means this is our 0 point. So the next point is maximum, which is pi by 2. In here the next point is 0. This one is our maximum. Our graph should be drawn between positive 1 and negative 1. Am I right or not? Yes. Our first was in sine 0, but in this one it is minus pi by 2. This is our first point. Now the second point is maximum. This is our second point, which is maximum. The next point, it crosses, so it should cross from here. The next point is our minimum. This is our next point, minimum, and the next point, it crosses. This is our graph. Our previous graph starts from here. Now we have a transition along x-axis. It means this point starts from minus pi divided by 2. It is our graph. This is our which graph? This is, let me delete this one. This is our sine x plus pi by 2. Sine x plus pi by 2. And the remaining is like this one. If you deeply focus on this graph, it is graph of cosine. Why? Because it starts from here. If you deeply think, now from here, this is our cosine graph. Also we had that sine pi by 2 plus x, it changed to cosine. We have studied in previous lesson. This is in second quadrant, so sine is positive. Pi by 2 plus x, x is an angle, acute angle. Am I right or not? Yes. So sine pi by 2 plus x or sine x pi plus pi by 2, they are same. So it is the graph of the cosine. You have got. Let me have another example. If I have fx is equal to sine x minus pi. Now, how you can draw this graph? First, you have to find the initial point. X minus pi equal to 0, x is equal to pi. It means graph of sine starts from pi point. Now, what is the graph of sine? We have our x-axis, we have our y-axis, the amplitude is +1, -1. we have negative 1. Now 0, we have pi by 2, we have pi, 3 pi by 2, we have 2 pi. Our sign starts from 0, but this graph should start from pi. It means from here. Let me have some more points. This is 5 pi by 2. This is what? This is 3 pi. Am I right? 2 pi, 2.5, 3 pi, 3.5, 4 pi, like this one we have. Now it starts from 0. If this one starts from, from pi, the next point, this is our positive 1 line, this is our negative line. It starts from pi. The next one is our maximum point. This is our next point, which is maximum. The next point, it should cross. This is our negative, our minimum, and this one is our, it should cross. Now graph of sine starts from pi point. It means we have a transition from 0 to pi along x-axis. We have pushed this one, and in here we have pulled this one. Have you got? Yes. Or here we have the same graph. If you deeply see this one, sine, we have a negative pi minus x. This minus come here, so it is minus sine pi minus x. We will have minus sine pi minus x. It's sine x. It's in the second quadrant. It's positive, and this positive with this one minus sine x. Deeply, if you see, this is the graph of minus sine x. Sine x was like this one, and minus sine x starts from here. We had in previous board. I think you have got. So this is called the transition along x-axis. Now I draw as an example for sine. Can you draw for the cosine? If I have, yes, you have to do fx. Suppose cosine or sine, no, cosine of x plus pi by 2. This is your homework. Cosine x plus pi by 2. You have a transition along x-axis, and it will start from negative pi by 2. Write it, please. Transition along y-axis. Along y-axis, the graph looks like fx is sine x plus negative a number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, or cosine x plus minus a number. Suppose if I have fx is equal to sine x plus 2. Now this is a transition along which axis? Along y-axis, because we have a number which is added or maybe subtracted from the trigonometric ratios. If we have this one in the bracket, it means this is a transition in x-axis. If we have this one outside the bracket, it is a transition along the y-axis. Now, how we can do this one? How we can do this one? By the way, First, you have to put this 2 to the y. This fx means y. This put this 2 to the left side. Y minus 2 is equal to sine x. Both are them the same. Now equal this one to 0. Y minus 2 equal to 0. Y is 2. What does it mean? It means we have a transition along y is equal to 2 line. What does it mean? It means if I have this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. Now find y equal to 2. Y equal to 2. Y is a constant number. So we have a line parallel to the x. This is y equal to 2. Am I right or no? Yes. This is our y equal to 2. Now, how we can draw our graph? Our graph of sine was between positive 1 and negative 1. Yes. This is pi by 2. This is pi. This is 3 pi by 2. And this one is 2 pi. Am I right or not? Yes. Copy these number in this line. Pi by 2. Pi. 3 pi by 2. And 2 pi. Have you copied this one? Yes. Now, your graph was between positive 1 and negative 1. The same in here between, for this line, positive 1 is here, which is positive 3. Negative 1 is here, which is positive 1. For two line, positive 1 is 3, negative 1 is 1. Am I right? Yes. Our graph was here. Now you have to make this graph and this line. This is your line. This is your line. It's easy. Listen, please. It starts from here. This is our maximum. So it is y equal to sine x plus 2. Write it. I will make another example. Suppose another example. Example number 2. I'm sorry. For example, y is equal to or fx is equal to sine x minus what? 4. Minus 4. Now, how we can do? First, this is a transition along y-axis. Why? Because this 4 is not in a bracket with the angle. So, put 4 to the left side. Y, this minus 4 here, it's plus 4, is equal to 0. Y is minus 4. It means you have to draw the graph of sine and y is equal to minus 4. Now, this is our x-axis. This is our y-axis. So find y equal to minus 4. Where is minus 4? This is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4. This is our line. Now, our previous was between 0, it's pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2, and also 2 pi. Copy this one and your new line. Am I right or not? Yes. What's the amplitude for this question? This number which we have the coefficient, it's 1. It means positive 1, negative 1. But in here positive 1, for minus 4 positive 1 is minus 3. Why? Because we have minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. This is minus 4, this line. And for minus 4, it's positive 1. And for minus 4, this is negative 1. The graph should be made between these amplitudes. Am I right or not? Now, for sine, it starts from here. Am I right or not? Yes. The next point, which is pi by 2, it is our maximum point. This is our maximum point. The next one, it crosses. The next one, it's our minimum. And this next one, it crosses. This graph is y is equal to sine x minus 4. Now you can draw the graph of cosine also. Suppose if I have y is equal to cosine x plus 5. How you can do? Put 5 to left side. Y minus 5 is equal to 0. Y is equal to 5. Now find y equal to 5. Equal to 5. This is suppose 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5. Am I right or not? Now let me delete this one. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this one is 6. Now this is our y equal to 5. Copy these numbers: 0, pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2, and 2 pi. Am I right? Cosine starts from here, from positive 1. The positive 1 for 5 is 6, negative 1 is 4. This is the graph for cosine x plus 5. I think you have got. Write it, please. Now, the last question. Y is equal to 3 sine x plus pi by 2 minus 1. Can you draw this one? Yes. We have a transition along x-axis, and we have an expansion or contraction along y-axis, and also we have a transition along y-axis. Now, how can we do this one? First, you have to find that along which line or axis we have to draw this graph. Now, it means put this minus 1 to the left side. It is y plus 1 is equal to 0. Y is minus 1. It means our graph should be drawn in minus 1. Am I right or not? Yes. This is our x-axis. This is our y-axis. Now, negative 1. This is our negative 1. It means the graph should draw in this axis. Am I right? Yes. Yes. Now, we have an amplitude 3. Amplitude is 3. It means it should be drawn between positive 3 and negative 3. What is our amplitude? Positive 3 for minus 1. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, which is positive 2. Here we have 0. For 0 is positive 1 for minus 1. Positive 1, which is positive 2 for this one, and positive 2, which is positive 3. It means the graph should be drawn between this one, 3 unit below, which is minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. Am I right? Yes. Now, it starts from where x plus pi by 2 is equal to 0. X is minus pi divided by 2. The graph starts from minus pi divided by 2. This is our 0. This is minus pi divided by 2. This is positive pi divided by 2. Pi. This is what? 3 pi by 2. And we have 2 pi. Our graph of sine starts from minus pi divided by 2. From here it starts. Second, it starts from where? From here. Second, the next point is our maximum. This is for minus pi divided by 2. This is our next point. It should be maximum. The maximum line is here, not this one. Am I right? Yes. This is our maximum point. The next point it should cross. The next point it should be our minimum point, and the next point it should cross. Now, This is our graph for y is equal to 3 sine x plus pi by 2 minus 1. I think you have got. Our x-axis is here. This is our x-axis. But we draw this one and this one. It means this was our minus pi divided by 2. This was our 0. Am I right? And this was our pi by 2. This point was our pi. This point was our 3 pi by 2. And this point is our 2 pi. This is our graph for 3 sine x plus pi by 2 minus 1. I'm sure that you can draw every graph. If we have an expansion with the x, so this graph may be drawn in as a contraction or as an expansion in a specific period. Write it, please. By the way, my lovely students, my lovely brothers and sisters, I love you all. Please support me on the YouTube channel, please. And as a request, I need it very much. Allah Hafiz. Up to next lecture. Goodbye.